Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. If you find us on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. If you're on a podcast platform, please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast so more of us midlife women can connect to empowering conversation. Now, today we're going to be talking about how we procrastinate in finding a hobby in midlife that brings us joy, that journey of figuring out what it is we like to do. So my guest wants to talk about why it's important to find yourself and how to find a hobby so that you can live a life that could possibly turn into a new career or just more joy, finding something interesting and new about yourself. My guest today is Mary Kay Savarese. She's a traditionally published fictional author and speaker. Mary, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, Gina. What a pleasure it is to be with you today and your wonderful audience.
You know, my audience is wonderful. They're an amazing group of women, all dynamically living midlife to the beat of their own drum. And that's why someone like you is such a perfect fit for my audience, because you're a woman who came to midlife and found something that took you in a completely different direction. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh, I would love to, Gina. So I think as many of us do, we work full time, we get married, we raise a family, and there's something we have here, and it goes on the back burner. And for me, years and years on the back burner, as I took care of everybody else in the family, was this creativity. I wanted to write, but I really didn't have that opportunity. I was just too busy living life. So finally, I have 3 children, and as they went off to college, my time freed up. My life changed a little bit in the sense that I was able to give myself the time. And Gina, at that point in life, I'm an overnight success. What I mean by an overnight success is a 10-year overnight success. My goal was to be a traditionally published fiction author, and it took me that long before I signed my first contract.
You know, this idea of creativity has come up over and over again. It's amazing how many women have these creative juices that they're rediscovering in midlife. So how did you turn that corner and give yourself permission or find the time or allow that idea to come to reality?
This is the honest truth. Writing saved my life. My creativity and wanting to write really saved me through a difficult period in my life. And what that difficulty was, and many of us women and men face, as we become those empty nesters, we jump around. How wonderful. As far as I was concerned, the kids, they were ready to take off. This was all wonderful. Well, it was the senior year of my youngest daughter, college year, and something started to happen to me. On the surface, I was happy and bubbly and thrilled where I was in life, but something was not right. I did go through menopause and managed to get through that without too much difficulty, but something was hitting me on the side of my head and saying, you have a problem. And what my problem was, one day I woke up and my legs were numb and my arms were numb. And I literally thought that I was having problems with my nerves. As it turned out, it was anxiety that was creeping in. And what I had to deal with, and this was after many medical tests, finally the doctor said, okay, let's take a look at your mental. There's nothing wrong with me mentally, because Gina, we as women and men know, sometimes we're ashamed to admit we can't deal with this. and can't deal with that. We can deal with 100 things. Well, I realized I had to come to terms with the fact that my family unit, as I knew it, was dead. And that sounds weird and creepy, but what I mean by dead was I had to give up the idea of having that baby, of chasing after the toddler, of the teenagers where they didn't come home until late in the wee hours. Those years were done. And my mind was not ready to give that up yet. I was still there. And so my writing helped me so much through my anxiety. But at the time, it was a hobby. And I had this dream. I've always had this dream of being traditionally published. So I would wake up every day and I would just go and want to create. And it helped me through such a very, very difficult time in my life.
Did journaling play into that during that season as well, or did you just go straight to writing stories?
For me, it was concentrating on something other than myself. And I realized if I'm writing, guess what? I'm not having that anxiety. I'm not feeling a numbness in my legs. So what does that tell me? My mind off of me on something else. Mm-hmm. I had to learn, and I went through therapy. I was on medication back then. You know, I love to talk about it now. It was the journey, Gina, as we all face. And I'm so happy to have taken that journey. And I am now on the other side of the bridge, and I can look back. And it really was a blessing because you learn about yourself and you learn to never give up on yourself. And many times we do. And that happens in midlife. Hey, it's not over, baby. We're just starting. So let's just grab it and go for it when we have that passion and desire to do something. And that's what I had and still do.
That's amazing. You know, it is a little bit difficult for a lot of people to even know where to start, right? Where do you begin? Because what if someone didn't have that desire to write, you know?
Yeah. And what I want to say is you don't have to write. You know what makes you happy. What makes you want to get out of bed early in the morning? It could be anything. It could be shopping. It could be gardening. It could be volunteering. Something that you have a passion for. You can't wait to get to it. Traveling, anything. That is a passion, and it gives you such joy that you feel like you have a purpose. And for many of us, yes, we're still working and we need to work, but there is a purpose that gives us joy.
I think joy, you know, finding that, what is it that makes us feel, like you said, not in a selfish sort of way, but just rediscovering ourselves. Because I think there's total validity to the lives that we've lived up to this point. And I had total joy in being a mom. That's Absolutely. What I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think that's what made the end of it, if you will, the hardest, was because I had thought about becoming a parent, right? And then you get to be it and you do 20, 30 years, depending on how many kids you have, right?
Right.
And I have friends who have 9 kids, you know, and it was the bulk of their life, you know, and then because they had so many kids, the grandkids started coming before the youngest kids. And it's like such a different journey. But for someone like me, where I don't have grandchildren, I have 2 daughters and no grandchildren. And it's like, you know, I want to get together with a friend, but they've got to babysit their grandchild, or, you know, it's a very interesting season and it looks so different for each one of us. Don't you agree?
Exactly. And there was one word you mentioned, Gina, selfish. I think at this point in our lives, we can be a little selfish because we've devoted ourselves to our families, to our work. And as I said earlier, we put ourselves on the back burner and our desires. So I think this is the point in life, midlife, where, you may be afraid, but don't be afraid. Take that leap And I can promise you, if you have a desire to do something, I can promise you it'll happen for you. Not necessarily overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. And I'm still working at it, but it's something that I love, and it's a hobby that I have turned into a career.
Now, how old were you when this journey began?
I was I was almost approaching 50 when the journey began for me. And maybe just a little bit younger, because I wanted to write, but I had to prove to myself that I could write. So I spent many years writing the manuscripts and sending them out. Back then, publishers were still willing to take a look at your work and critique it. And the whole publishing world has changed. As we've all changed, so has the industry. And I just went along with the journey. And you know what I always had? I always had hope, and I always believed in myself. And I loved it so much that even if something never happened to me and my whole goal was to be published, that it gave me joy, that I always wanted to write and create.
What advice would you give someone who is kind of coming to those crossroads of, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do? And maybe the stories of people around them could be like, oh, are you going to retire? Oh, are you going to, help watch your grandkids, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But for some people, there needs to be something else, right?
Yep.
How do you encourage them? What advice would you give to someone in starting that journey of figuring all that out?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it's all about what you know it. You know it in your heart, what makes you happy. And if it's taking care of your grandchildren, then that's the most wonderful thing there is. It's really what gives you passion and what makes you want to jump out of bed and do and live your life in that regard. And the next thing I want to say is, there are so many people that will just say, you can't do that. Hey, that'll never happen. Go like this, la, 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 la. If it's something you want, go for it, do it. But I'll tell you a secret though. As my goal was to write, I only let my family know, my kids, my husband. I didn't tell any of my friends or outside family, because I knew what was going to happen. They would say, you published yet? Get anything yet? What's going on? Why is it taking so long? You're obviously not very good. So I kept the secret to myself, and I just kept up with my passion, and I lived my life. And this was my little secret, but I loved doing it. And as I said, it wasn't overnight, but it turned into a career.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice, actually. I feel like we can be talked out of things because we haven't gained our own confidence yet, right? We're exploring, and so we're maybe more inclined to believe what other people say about us over what we might believe about ourselves.
Exactly. And everybody's like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many more people that will put you down instead of picking you up. And just stick with it and have that hope and dream in your heart, and never give up on yourself. Never, ever, ever give up on yourself and think you're worthless or you're not capable of doing it. And the other thing that will stop us is fear. We're paralyzed by fear. So if you're dealing with something like that, take little tiny baby steps. You don't have to jump into anything all at once. Just start slowly. Even experiment with things. As I said, this makes you happy, or this. I love to watch mysteries. I love to watch, anything with romance in it. And that gives me enjoyment. That could be your hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. It's something that gives you pleasure.
I feel like you have to spend time with yourself, don't you? Like you have to kind of pull away from the to-do list, right?
Yeah.
The things we're used to doing and being, and holding a tiny space for like, okay, and this time I'm going to allow myself to do X, Y, and Z, right? I'm going to give myself permission to spend an hour and maybe take an art class or take a nature walk, or
Right.
My husband, for my birthday and Valentine's, he surprised me with a hawk walk.
Oh,
And I was, I love birds of prey. I have no idea why. And so it was so beautiful. And allowing those kinds of experiences, it may not become the thing you do,
right.
right? But it's, why not start ticking things off of that bucket list?
Exactly.
Achievable things.
Sure. And something you love, something that gives you joy. That's the key to it.
Joy. Joy is one of those things. It's different than happiness, isn't it?
It is, because we're always searching for joy. We are. And when we do find it, we're like, okay, is that it? Is that all there is to it? Right? But I think it's so true. If you just look at the beauty in something, it's amazing how you're filled with joy. Where I live in the community, we have these birds, ibis birds, that just nest every night, and they sleep for 12 hours, and early in the morning they all take off. And one woman said to me, I used to deal with such anxiety, but every morning I watch them take off, and then in the evening I watch them come home, and it's thousands of them. And she makes videos of these beautiful birds, and she goes on other podcasts. It's amazing what she's done with something that helped her and brought her joy.
I think we tend to think in real concrete terms, right? Because I don't think it's natural to go, I enjoy watching those birds leave and come back and then turn it into something. Mm-hmm. I think there's a real curiosity to the process, right? Like, what could I do? What could this be? And does it even matter what the true outcome is beyond joy?
Right. It's so different for everybody.
I just think that when we are living a life of such everything's planned, we've got someone to take somewhere, we've got something to do, we've got a meal to cook, we've got a project to finish. It's a shift that's necessary, isn't it? You kind of have to get off of that track. Unless you're building a business and you're an entrepreneur, then you can gather all of your knowledge and just put the energy somewhere else. And maybe that's a good way of talking about reinvention, right? Taking your energy and redirecting it.
So, Gina, you're going to laugh at how I reinvented myself. What I love to write about is fantasy, because reality is too real for me. So I've had, and I'm also known as an author who writes with quirky titles. So my first novel, which is a mystery romance intertwined with the supernatural, is titled Tigers Love Bubble Baths and Obsession Perfume. Who knew? And the second novel, and with a new publishing house, it's the first of a trilogy, is titled The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper. And toile wallpaper, it's part of our everyday lives, although people may not know what toile is. But toile is a very artistic wall covering, two-tone, that tells a story or a fabric. So these were parts of my life that I just, like the Tigers Love Bubble Baths and Obsession Perfume. I had come up with that title because I visited a wildlife reserve in St. Augustine, Florida. And the end of the tour, I looked at a bubble bath I looked at this vat overflowing with bubbles, and out walks this Siberian tiger, 600 pounds, looks as though he's taking off a robe. He jumps into this vat of bubbles, and there's a wildlife handler. I'm behind a thin cage. Wildlife handler standing on a ladder and spraying Obsession perfume into his tongue. And I said to myself, Tigers Love Bubble Baths and Obsession. Who knew? That's the title of my next manuscript. And what this place was an old folks' home. We love little cats. This was for big cats, tigers and lions and panthers and jaguars. So that became a metaphor. So as these big cats are tossed aside, my protagonist was tossed aside after 25 years of marriage, like an old shoe, and she has to begin again. And it's like one murder after another. So will she survive? Is she the cause of it? So that's why I say I love to write in fantasy, because reality is too real for me. And I just get into this creative mode and the juices just start flowing, and it's just amazing.
Do you write every day?
Yes, my goal is to write in the morning if I can. I mean, other things do happen, so I put it aside. But then in the afternoon, I need to market myself. And marketing is, for an author, social media. And I do work with a social media person. And I try to get on radio and podcasts. And so there's a lot to do. But another passion I found, I would never do it. I mean, I have so much reverence for somebody like yourself and everybody else that hosts a podcast. I love going on podcasts. I would never do one, but I love going on them. They're so much fun.
I'll tell you, doing a podcast is such a great experience. And the beauty of it is I've met so many amazing people.
Yes.
And I get to meet them all the time.
Yeah. And I've met amazing podcasters.
Mm-hmm. There's something wonderfully socially satisfying about podcasting,
There really is. It's just that communication, and then just sharing the ideas. And that could be another hobby for somebody.
I think understanding yourself well is helpful. Not what you've done, although it's good to know your gifts and abilities and what you bring to the world. But I think knowing ourselves, because I think we've done a lot of things in life that maybe we didn't love, but they were necessary.
Exactly. Yeah. We have to do necessary things. It's just a part of life. I mean, gosh, if we could just wake up, go sit on a boat. Oh, I'm always trying to win that lottery, but it doesn't happen.
But I think if we can hold a space for that idea about what, if I could do anything, and maybe removing the idea that it has to produce a specific result.
Right.
Other than just enjoyment, right?
I love that. Get that out of your head, that just start out small. It's fine if you want to set little goals for yourself, but start with what gives you enjoyment. Start right there. And it could just be traveling. Boy, if you're blessed and you can just travel, the joys of that are so, so incredible.
Yeah, I think for us as women, that community piece is really kind of important, isn't it? We have gone from being the mama bear, many of us.
Yes.
Or, the one kind of running everybody's lives at work, or just kind of being a den mother in some way, shape, or form. And and we can sometimes feel isolated because people's lives are going in so many different directions in this season of life. And I think that community piece, even if it's not the community you've known, did you find yourself being drawn to writing communities or groups or anything like that?
Oh, it's wonderful. Because I was just going to say that another way too is to join groups of something that interests you, but just meeting up with other writers and other authors. What it is, it's inspiring. We all share our stories, and you hear the heartache and you hear the wonderful news. So yes, it's wonderful to be part of a community of something. So it could be anything. Church community, anything. It's so wonderful to find that camaraderie.
I think it helps us see that it's possible for us too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And to just go out with your girlfriends. I mean, to me, sometimes that's the most uplifting. I may be a little down that day. I go out with my girlfriends. We have a drinky drink, and it's like you're on top of the world again, right?
I think it's sometimes surprising what we find ourselves interested in, don't you?
Absolutely.
Like you knew you liked to write, but for some people I've talked to, they were surprised by how much joy they got out of writing or art or you mentioned creativity specifically, and I think creativity is a much broader conversation than just art and writing. Like you can be creative in so many ways. And I feel like for someone, it could be redecorating their house. It could be
Absolutely.
gardening.
Yeah.
I think creativity is so good for our brain, don't you?
Absolutely. It keeps you going. It really does. And that is just so important to find something that, another way of putting it, stimulates you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that really gets your juices flowing. And it's wonderful. You enjoy life. You live life. You don't want to just sit there and say, hey, I'm getting older. Never. That's why I always say, never give up on yourself. I'm a perfect example.
You mentioned that it took 10 years to get to the goal.
To get to my first, and at the time, back then when I started writing, self-publishing was taboo. Now, the publishing world has changed. So many things have changed with it. And self-publishing, there's so many opportunities. If you do want to be a writer and have something published, you have so many opportunities available to you, self-publishing, co-publishing. Just be careful. Do a lot of research, because it very much, like anything else, is a cottage industry, and you can be taken for a ride as well. So just be careful in what you choose to do, which I think is very important too.
That's an interesting point too, right? We can either just jump into something, or we can investigate it and see if it tickles our tummy a little bit,
Sure. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Why not? Why not?
Why not is a great question.
Yeah.
Really, in this season of life, right? Why not?
Exactly.
There's so much that we're capable of, and I think I always equate it to learning to walk as a child, right? You don't just get up and walk. When you're learning something new, I think sometimes we're kind of far removed from that learning something new on such a broad scale, right? That it takes so much patience that we forget. We're good at so many things that sometimes when you're learning something new, there's a learning curve that we can find joy in. Now, did you find joy in your learning curve?
Absolutely. There were several things that I loved to do. I'm also a Eucharistic minister, so I loved going to nursing homes. And one thing that, you see so many people doing things. Why don't you ask yourself, well, they're capable of doing it. Why can't I? Don't put yourself down. They can do it. So can I. And that's a big help. If there's something you enjoy doing, it's to take a look at somebody who's become successful. So I'm in that learning process. I like to see how other authors have succeeded and what they do. So that's always a big help.
That's really cool. I actually had a friend who got married, and she asked me if I would officiate their wedding. And I was like, well, yeah, I suppose I could. It's like it hadn't crossed my mind, but sure. And I really enjoyed preparing for it and doing it. And it's interesting to think about why something is interesting to you, because maybe I don't want to officiate weddings, which I did for her because I love her, and what a gift it was to be able to stand in front of her and be the one that's encouraging her and doing the vows. That was really amazing. But I thought, well, I don't want to do this for strangers. Like I could, but I didn't want to. But what about that? Why did I enjoy that? Is a great thing too, is kind of almost investigating what was the element that really brought me joy.
Right.
It might not be the actual task, but there's something about that task that can be pulled out and kind of played with to kind of create that next step. And I think isn't that kind of what it is? It's the next step.
Right. And challenges. And you know what? Many of us shy away from challenges, don't, because it only takes maybe that first time you'll stumble. But boy, you know what? You feel that there's that word that you use, empowered. It's just take that risk. What is the worst thing that can happen to you? So you fall flat on your face. Who cares? my face a lot, especially in editing. It's amazing. But it's amazing how empowered you feel if you're able to just cross over that and experience something and learn from it. It's wonderful.
I think that could be a joyous journey too. The curiosity and the learning.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's just so many things that are available to us nowadays. And as I said, some of us we hold back because we think we're not going to be good at it. Who cares? Do it. If you love it, do it. Don't listen to what anybody else says.
That's such good advice. We do hold ourselves back.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to fail. But, nowadays they say failing's the best thing. It's better than succeeding, right? How many times have you heard that?
I think it's a paradigm shift. It feels risky to put yourself out there without, I don't know how else to put it other than a lot of the times as a woman, we're doing something for someone.
Yeah.
So there's this measure that's kind of easy to find, right?
Right.
If you ask me to do something for you, I can find purpose and joy in doing it, but I can also know the measure of my success or my accomplishment by how satisfied you are or how it all worked out. And I think when we're stepping out in new territory, those metrics disappear a little bit, or they're way farther out in the future.
Right.
So there's this ability to accept the unknown, be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and finding that sense of adventure in your heart. Like, you know what? Like you said, just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Exactly. So it's not something that you thought it would be. Go on to something else. Don't let it get you down. And, one of the things I found, the older as, women as we become, you do get more courage. And it's like, okay, let me take a chance on that. Who knows?
Courage. Courage is doing things in the face of your uncertainty and your fear, isn't it?
Right.
I think having confidence in our abilities is really important. Really recognizing what we have accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why couldn't you do this? How many things have we done? If we look back, we have the perspective of, well, we did that, but did we know what we were doing when we started that? Reminding ourselves, right, of that ability to figure things out.
Right.
I love the journey myself. I don't know about you, but it's a bit exciting to follow these breadcrumbs through life a little bit. I have art is the thing, is the breadcrumb that I'm following. And I find that, sometimes what we pursue isn't measurable in a traditional way. And maybe that is something, as someone's listening to you thinking, well, what do you do? Just write? Like, how does one direct that energy? Let's say for you, because you're a writer, how did you direct that energy toward, for lack of a better term, a productive end?
Yeah. Very much I was dealing with the craft. So I had to prove to myself that I had to write. And then, we talk in terms of, authors talk in terms of words. So like 90,000 words, writing 90,000 words is probably about 429 pages. And if you think of something like that, you would shut down. But if you just break it down. So for me, it always starts with something in my life that gives me an idea for a title. That's where I start. I have a title. And then I may have an end, but I start creating those characters, which are so exciting. And then it's really, I have a general idea. It's not that I have to have outline after outline, but I can outline a little bit, maybe 3 chapters. But you start one sentence. A sentence becomes a paragraph. A paragraph becomes a page. And before you know it, you have 1 page. And then if you do a page every day, you have 365 pages or 300 pages. You've written a book. And one of the things that I did learn in writing a novel is if you can see it in your head as a movie and follow it in your head as a movie and get it down on paper. And the other thing is, as a writer, you just don't want to tell, you want to show. And that could be a very difficult thing, but it's a craft. You're honing your craft, you're learning, and you are continuously learning.
That's really great advice, right? And I think that analogy, I could take your truth, which is you have to picture it in your head, as an analogy for anything that we learn, right?
Right.
If you can imagine it, you could do it.
That's what Walt Disney said. If you can imagine it, you can do it, right?
Yeah. And I think we look at extraordinary people and we separate ourselves from them. Yeah. But we see him as that successful, extraordinary person. But at some point, he was just a man with a passion and a dream.
And an idea, right?
Yeah.
An idea with the mouse.
Which, who would have thought, right?
Who would have thought, right?
I'm actually going to Disneyland today. And it's like, you go and you see all these people that are passionate about his dream and what it gave. And I think some of us will have the opportunity, like yourself, to write something or to create something that other people will enjoy. Would you say, Mary, that you write about things you enjoy and that you find interesting, and that attracts like-minded people? Like, are you writing for essentially yourself and what you enjoy, or are you trying to write for someone else?
What I do is, as I said, I love to write in fantasy. And why I love to write in fantasy is reality is too real. It's too real for me. So I create these worlds. And what I hope to give an audience, the readers, is the ability to just get that few hours of break and to just slip into a different world, get away from what you're dealing with daily. And just that's why the girl in the toile wallpaper, I take you on a journey. I take you to different time periods, back to the present. I take you to different worlds. And it's just so nice to be able for a couple of hours to escape our everyday life, which is fine. But at the same time, like, I love to watch movies that revolve around fantasy adventure. I study those. As I said, you write if you could see it as a movie. And I just love fantasy adventure. Throw in some romance, which is what I do. I throw in a couple of, that's the best for me. You always have to have romance in there.
I really, you and I are kindred spirits in that way. I just, people make fun of like Hallmark movies.
Oh, I love them.
I love them. They're predictable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't make movies, but I can see it. Matter of fact, we even tested, this is a funny side note. I was like, my husband he was like, something's going to happen right about now, right? To kind of throw off the romance. And we started checking the timer on the movies, and it always happens between like 20 minutes and 16 minutes left in the movie, right?
Right.
And I thought, I love that. And do you know why I love that? Because not that Hallmark movies ever get too intense for me, but if you know how something's going to go, you can struggle for 2 minutes in a movie because it's going to get better. And so for me, exactly. I like the predictability. People make fun of it, but I'm like, that's what I like about it. It makes me happy. I think it's, for the people on video, they can see when you talk that you have this joy and this happiness, and it's radiating out of you. And I think that in and of itself is an excellent goal for us as we're trying to figure this thing out in midlife. If it's not clear to us, right, is that seeing what your body and face is expressing from the thing that you're doing and paying attention to how it feels. Because it's interesting, you actually physically were healing your body through this activity.
Yes.
And not everyone will have that. It saved your life. Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So if you had to give 3 key takeaways to my audience about anything pertaining to this midlife reinvention, what would those 3 things be?
That we're not old. We're young and beautiful. We still have desires and hopes and plans, and to never give up on ourselves or those joys. Be selfish. For once in your damn life, be selfish and put yourself first, because we don't. We don't. And yeah, we're going to have issues and we have problems. And always, one thing, I was in the beginning, when I was dealing with this severe anxiety, I was ashamed, Gina. And when I think about it, and I'm like, how stupid were you? Why be ashamed? And when I finally started to go into therapy and talk about it, and you figure it out, the brain is an amazing thing. It does help you heal and, get the help that you need. But it's really never to give up on yourself, to just always have that. If you can find that joy and peace within yourself, never give up, never, ever. Don't let anybody put you down.
It's a confidence, isn't it?
And very much for women, the confidence gains as the older we become. But that's all a part of growing older. I mean, right? You started as a baby, right? You have no confidence, you walk. But I mean, that's life. That's really life.
Well, Mary, how can people find you?
They can find my books. My latest book is the first of a trilogy, The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper. And it is, if you love fantasy, if you love adventure, if you love romance, I'll take you on that journey. Take it with me. And the second book in the trilogy will be out shortly. I wish I could tell you the title, but it should be out in the next couple of months. We are still working on the cover with the publisher and the title. And I'm all over. I'm on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, any independent bookstores. I always try to push them because they suffered so much with COVID. So many of them closed. And visit my author website, www.mary, M-A-R-Y-K, Savarese, SAVARESE.com. You can connect with me there. I have my toile room. The other thing is I'm very thrilled and humbled. Both of my books have won awards. My first book, The Tigers of Bubble Bath and Obsession Perfume, who knew, won 8 awards. And my most recent book, The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper, I'd say 5 awards, just won 3. The New York City Big Book Award. And what was the other one? Oh, yes. The Royal Dragonfly for science fiction, fantasy, and young adult and older. And my The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper has been compared to Doctor Who and A Wrinkle in Time. So in the reviews, so I'm very thrilled and humbled by all of that. And it's inspiring. It makes me want to keep creating and writing. But Gina, it's all baby steps. It was all baby steps for me, and it's still a learning curve, and it's probably a good thing. You never figure it out. You just keep going.
That's a really good way to wrap that up. You don't figure it out. You just keep going.
And the theme in The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper, the Star Writers Trilogy, is it is written in the stars. And what that means, it's written in the stars for you, for me, and it's your journey. And your journey can change. It's not that it's set and it's set, but journeys do change.
That's the adventure.
Try to keep a positive attitude, because I think when we look at things, try to look at things positively, there's more joy to it.
Absolutely. Well, Mary, I want to thank you so much for sharing your light and your enthusiasm, your encouragement, your words of wisdom, and your words of experience with my audience. I think it's so important that, I get to meet women like you so that you can say to my audience, it is possible. Your message is so empowering and so encouraging. And I want to congratulate you as well on all of your success, because you just kept taking the next best step. It's so encouraging, and it's so cool to see you thriving. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Friends, today, if you find yourself on YouTube, just look down below Everything to Mary is there. And if you're on YouTube, look behind Mary and you will see the cover to the first book in her trilogy. And when this is airing, her second book will already be out. So you'll be able to get both of them and you won't have to wait, which is fantastic. Also, if you're on the podcast platform and you cannot see lovely Mary, you can either head over to YouTube and check it out. She's episode 322. Or you can go to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 322, and all the links to Mary will be there so you can find her books. So if you didn't quite catch how to spell her name, don't you worry, I've got you covered. Friends, this is one of those conversations that we are building a community here of reminding ourselves of what we are capable of. And when someone like Mary comes on and shares her story, it is so that you can see a glimpse of yourself in her story, so that you can grab hands and hearts with her virtually and be pulled along in your own curiosity journey, your own reinvention journey, and realize that whatever it is that's stirring in your heart, hold a space for it and give it a chance, and understand you're not probably going to be excellent at it out the gate. And that's okay. Matter of fact, it's better than okay, because when we're learning and we're building a community and we're holding a space for ourselves, we find that joy that Mary was talking about. So friends, be encouraged that this next season of life is going to be the most empowering, most confidence building, most joyful season of your life. Believe that and pursue that. We look forward to hearing your stories and knowing that Mary's story has been a part of that encouragement to help you get there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I ask that you would just remember to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast, this episode, Mary's book. Let's build a community of holding each other up and together as we journey through midlife and beyond. Thank you for joining us, friends. I look forward to sharing more inspirational people, strategies, tips, and stories with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.